Subcommittee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. We welcome everyone to today's hearing. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida to lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pat, can you handle that?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thank the lady for leading us. Without objection, Mr. Roy will be permitted to participate in this hearing. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. On the third day of this administration, January 23rd, 2021, the White House sent an email to Twitter. The email said this: wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP, in all caps. That third day, what did that tweet say? Tweet from Mr. Kennedy said this: Hank Aaron's tragic death is part of a wave of suspicious deaths among elderly closely following administration of the vaccine. He received the vaccine on January 5th to inspire other Black Americans to get the vaccine. Now, what's interesting about the email that the White House sent to Twitter is the subject line says, flagging Hank Aaron misinformation. Now, misinformation is when you don't have the facts right. You're saying things that aren't true. But when you look at Mr. Kennedy's tweet, there was nothing in there that was factually inaccurate. Hank Aaron, real person, great American, passed away after he got the vaccine, pointing out facts. And yet the White House on the third day was trying, actually, 1:04 a.m. on January 23rd, 2021, 37 hours into the administration, they were trying to censor Mr. Kennedy. I find that interesting. If you'll please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness is answering in the affirmative. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Kennedy, you are now recognized for your opening statement, and then we'll go right down the line.
Let me characterize my understanding of something and get your perspective on it. Following the 2016 election, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Collins, Peter Marks met with you, to the best of my understanding, regarding vaccine safety, in part as a result of your engagement with President Trump. And at that meeting, you requested evidence of a vaccine undergoing placebo-controlled trial safety tests prior to licensing. After making a show of looking for the document, Dr. Fauci informed you, to the best of my understanding, that the document was back in Bethesda and that he would eventually send the document to you. The document, to the best of my knowledge, was never sent, and that you sued HHS for documents showing and trying to figure out the truth of the matter, and that you found that not one study was done on pre-licensing safety testing for COVID vaccines. After a year, HHS finally sent you a letter stating, we don't have any. This means, to the best of my understanding, that nobody knows the risk profiles for these products or whether they avert more harm than they cause. And as a result, there's no real science behind these statements, but rather guesswork. Is that a fair characterization of what you've experienced?
That is a fair characterization. We had looked for many years to find a pre-licensing safety trial of any of the 72 vaccines doses that are now essentially mandated. They're recommended, but that's effectively mandated for American children, and we have not been able to find any. And every other medication requires, prior to licensing by FDA, that the company perform a safety trial that compares health outcomes in a placebo group and a similarly situated vaccine group. My assumption was that was done for vaccines. We found out that it hadn't been, that it was not, they were exempt. And I made that statement publicly. Dr. Fauci contradicted me, and when President Trump ordered him to meet with me, him and Francis Collins, and a group of my colleagues, I said to them at that time, you've said publicly that I've been dishonest about that. Can you show us a single pre-licensing safety trial, placebo-controlled safety trial for any of the 72 vaccines required for American children? And he made that show of looking through a file, and he said, well, they're back in Bethesda. And I said, will you send them to me? And I never heard from him again, so we sued the HHS under the Freedom of Information Law. After a year of litigation, they sent us a letter which is posted on CHD's website that acknowledges that they are now not able to locate a single pre-licensing safety trial, placebo control for any of the vaccines that are now mandated for children. These are zero liability vaccines. The immunity, which was passed in 1986, neither the Republicans or Democrats wanted it. Ronald Reagan at that time, who signed the bill, said, and Wyeth was the company that was pushing it, and they were saying that they were losing $20 in downstream liabilities for every dollar that they made in profits from vaccines. They were going to get out of the business if they were not granted immunity. Ronald Reagan said to them at that time, why don't you make the vaccines safe? And Wyatt said, because they're unavoidably unsafe.
And I'll just close by saying and asking, I know that this is informed by a great deal of conversations you've had with mothers and moms who came up to you, and if you could expand on that, I'll yield back.
Yeah, I mean, I was dragged kicking and screaming into this space because I was confronted by, when I was touring the country on suing companies about mercury and fish. And by the way, people, I spent 30 years trying to get mercury out of the fish in this country, and nobody ever called me anti-fish. At that time, we were trying to get mercury out of vaccines because mothers were coming and saying, my child was injured by the vaccine. These were many, many hundreds, literally, of mothers with intellectual disabilities. And they said, nobody's listening to us. The Democrats aren't listening to us. The Republicans aren't listening to us. And I felt like I should listen to them and actually read the science. And that is what got me down into the time. And by the way, it's the worst career decision I have ever made.
Time of the gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. You'll back.
In the fall of last year, I got a call from an inside source who told me that in 2 weeks, there's going to be a whistleblower from the CDC who's going to come out and say that the CDC had committed fraud on the MMR study and that they knew that vaccines were actually causing autism. I mean, that's a huge story. Unfortunately, it was a story I would not be able to tell on a medical talk show because a lot of our funding was coming from the pharmaceutical industry. And we were also very good friends with the CDC, who had appeared on our show many, many times. But I knew that once this story broke, 2 weeks later, that the mainstream news media would pick it up. Fox would be on it, CNN would be on it, MSNBC. And we're talking about the biggest medical story in the last decade or two, at least. So that 2 weeks came. I saw the video that was posted by Andrew Wakefield and Brian Hooker, and I heard the words of William Thompson and his confession.
Oh my God, I cannot believe we did what we did. But we did. It's all there. It's all there.
And I watched the blogosphere go crazy. Tweets, Facebook, social media, everybody talking about it. But not one mainstream media source went anywhere near the story. In fact, on CNN, someone put the story up on iReport and CNN took it down. And at that moment, I realized, wait a minute. Not only is my medical talk show being produced by the pharmaceutical industry, all of television is. We were never going to get this story.
This network president told me that if one of his talk shows allowed me on the air, that he would fire the host. This person is a friend of mine. And I would have to fire the host because this is where our advertisers are. And if he lost an advertiser, it's a major catastrophe for the network.
And if our media would be honest, they would look into things like this. And this is the problem we have with our media. I really feel like they pick and choose how they're going to report on things. If there's something that's along the lines of vaccines are safe and effective, you hear about it immediately. I read studies all the time that should be headlines, and nothing.
It effectively locks out any kind of debate that you have, not just in the major networks, but also in the so-called alternative media, which is supposed to be the antidote to corporate control of our country. Places like Salon and Slate and Huffington Post and Daily Beast and Mother Jones, also those media outlets will not cover this debate. I think it was Malcolm X said that the greatest power of the press is the power to ignore, and that's what we see in this sphere.
The power to ignore those who question vaccines and not cover the debate is an enormous power.
The press has effectively been neutralized. If all you have to do, Ty, is sit down and watch the 6 o'clock news on TV and see how many of those stories are bracketed by pharmaceutical ads. I was told by a network executive that during non-election years, during some months during non-election years, up to 70% of his news division revenues are coming from pharma.